here about really what's God called us to. We've been talking about that for some time now, and that's some of the emphasis that we've had in Cell. In Hebrews 12, it talks about what's the thing that is slowing us down. What are the weights? What's the thing that slows us down? And the word there says, from the race that's marked out for us. It's not the race that we've marked out for ourselves. The path that God has for us. And sometimes I think we know what that path is. I'm not as sure at times that God is really that interested in I think He gives us options on what to do. I think He's more interested in how we do what we do. That's very clear in the Scriptures. Like in Psalm 1, blessed is the man who does not, it says, walk in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. And on his law he will meditate day and night, and he will be like a tree planted by rivers of living water, yielding its fruit in season. And then there's this phrase, and whatever he does will prosper. Whatever he does. Speaking with someone this last week, it was a revelation to me. Because I think at times what we do is we become very keen on what is that specific thing that God is calling us to. It was clear in the garden what the Lord told the man in the garden. He says, you can eat from any tree. Whether you want to eat from the peach tree or the orange tree, it's okay with me. You're going to have a blessed life whether you go here or you go here or go here. But I'll tell you what, I'll tell you where not to go. But you know what? I want you to choose where you will go outside of that, and you're going to live a blessed life. And sometimes God just allows us to make choices. But He makes it clear what we ought not to do, rather than what to do. And I think sometimes we get too hung up on what to do. And He says, you know what? I just want you to follow me in whatever you do. That's what's clear. Whatever you do. And I'm thinking of that passage in Colossians. And whatever you do, do it with all your might as unto the Lord. Whatever you do, put your whole heart into it. No half-hearted stuff. So when we were singing that last song, and all this is for you, what were you thinking of? It's all about you, Jesus. And all this is for you. What were you thinking about on this? All this is. Excuse me?
Life.
Your life. Your life. I mean, you can go through your life. Getting up in the morning is for you. All this. I think you'll probably have regrets, or you won't like all this if your heart's not in it and you're not really trying. Because basically you're saying, this half-hearted effort's for you, God. That probably won't sit very well with you. And you say, all this is teeny, this is small, this is not good, this is that. Well, just look at your effort. Don't look at your heart. And I think that's what we're talking about. Okay, we've looked at hope, and as we walk this walk, unless you have hope, you'll give up. As we walk this walk, we got to have some tools in our tool bag. You got to have hope in your tool bag. Because there are times on this race that's marked out for us, we need some fresh water. Because it gets pretty dry along the way, and hope is, and I like what Charles Allen has to say, and we've looked at this before, and I think it's worth looking at again. When you say a situation or a person is hopeless, you're slamming the door in the face of God. Totally agree with that. That means we don't see God there. Someone's beyond the reach of God. Or a situation is beyond the hand of God. That's huge. We looked at these different stones that sustain hope. Recharge your batteries, raise your expectations, refocus on the future, play your strengths. Refuse to go it alone. That's about that yesterday. And I was thinking, last week, refuse to go it alone. We need different people. We need Pauls in our life. Paul was sort of a truth guy. He just spoke the truth very directly. But we need Barnabases who walks right alongside of us. We also need a David, a warrior, who will war. We need different types of people in our lives. 6, focus on what God is calling you to do. Burning the candle at both ends is as bright as you think. More than any other time in history, you were chronically rushed, habitually late, regularly exhausted, continually pressured, desperately overloaded, totally overwhelmed, vastly overcommitted. Do you know even one overcommitted, frantic, rushed, hurried, stressed out person who enjoys high levels of hope? I don't either. People that are like this ought to have warning labels affixed to their foreheads. Warning! Contents under pressure. Extreme danger of explosion. Now for some of us, maybe it's not that we've got so much that we're doing. Maybe the ditch is on the other side of the road. It was a poster some years ago, and it had this old piece of equipment, farm equipment, sitting there, and it was rusting. And underneath it says, God has not called us to wear out or to rust out. We can wear out. God's not called us to wear out, to burn ourselves out, nor has He called us to sit in the sidelines and rust out. And there's a ditch on either side of the road. And one of the keys to life, I think, of living well, is to find your balance and margin, and to find what good boundaries are. There needs to be a good mix between work and worship. There needs to be a good boundary between, because what happens is that maybe like Jim Burns, he's the president of Homeward Ministries, author of 40-some books. He starts out this message at this church conference, and he says this: 15 years ago, when I first got into the ministry, and leadership, he says, I had an affair. But it was not with another woman. It also wasn't with a man. 15 years ago, I had an affair, and it almost destroyed my marriage. I had an affair, and I almost lost my kids. I had an affair, I almost lost my ministry. I had an affair, and it almost wrecked my health. I had an affair with my career. All my extra time went to my career. All my extra effort went to my career. All my extra emotions went to my career. My career was all I thought about, and I almost lost my family and my ministry. And then he says, to me, this is the clincher of the words here. If the devil can't make you bad, he'll just make you busy because it will have the same effect. You can have it the other way. The devil can't make you bad, it'll just make you lazy. There's a ditch on either side of the road because it'll have the same effect. We need margin. We need boundaries in our life. I remember talking about boundaries some years ago. And I remember Pam saying that she didn't believe in boundaries. And if you understood Pam, she would minister to people all manner of the night or day or whatever. And you know what happened to her? Her health suffered horribly. I began to talk with her about boundaries. I think this was already after I met her and her health was going down. And I said, in the Bible it says that God slumbers not nor sleeps. But if we don't slumber or sleep, we've got problems. We need boundaries. We need to take care of, we have limitations. All of us have limitations. For some of us, our no is stuck. We don't know how to say no to people. And for some of us, our yes is stuck. We don't know how to say yes to many things. And we don't have good balance in our lives. And this is a hard one. If you don't have good balance in your life, you will find the ditch. You'll find a ditch, and you'll lose hope eventually. Marginless is being 30 minutes late to the doctor's office because you were 20 minutes late getting out of the hairdresser, because you were 10 minutes late dropping the kids off of school, because the car ran out of gas 2 blocks from the gas station and you forgot your purse. That's marginless. Margin, on the other hand, is having breath at the top of the staircase, money at the end of the month, and sanity left over after the kids graduate. Marginless is the baby crying and the phone ringing at the same time. Margin is grandma taking care of the baby for the afternoon. Marginless is being asked to carry a load 5 pounds heavier than you can lift. Wow. Some of us are just trying to carry a load. It's just a little bit harder than we can carry. I mean, that's why I call people up. That's why I talk with people. That's why I try to come alongside. Not that I'm the answer man. Because I see that the load is a little bit too heavy. Marginless is not having enough time to finish the book you're reading on stress. Margin is having the time to read that book twice. Marginless is fatigue, margin is energy, marginless is red ink, margin is black ink, marginless is hurry. And I was looking at my stress level the other day. And I make myself stressful. I put stress on myself. I have to hurry. I have to do this.
I have to be quicker. I have to, and then I felt myself starting to go there, and I said, I'm going to pace myself. And you know, life is much better at a good pace. Pace yourself. Think. You can only do so much to the degree that you're aware. I understand that. But if you're not aware, Jesus was never hurried, yet he did so much. I think hurry has to do with fear or worry or something. Margin is calm. Marginless is our culture. Margin is counterculture, having space and life in your schedule. Marginless is reality. Margin is remedy. Marginless is the disease of our decade. People get pushed. When we're overloaded, overcommitted, we lose. We lose joy, we lose confidence, we lose peace, we lose friendships, we endure life instead of enjoy life. We are grouchy, irritable, discouraged, we sacrifice family, closeness, we end up less productive, and worst of all, we end up out of touch with God and everybody in our lives. In other words, we lose hope. Boy, that's good. Hello. There we go. And here's the psalmist. The psalmist says, Lord, you observe my wanderings, my sleeping, my waking, my dreaming. You know everything I do in more detail than I know. Every detail of my life was already written in your book. You established the length of my life before I ever tasted the sweetness of it. One thing that helped me put some margin in my life was in 1 John chapter 5. As I was reading that some years ago, it talks about how the commandments of the Lord are not burdensome. What God expects of us is not burdensome. I remember thinking about that. I said, that burden is not God. I got to throw that away, because some of the burden that we carry are expectations. Not from God, from others. Maybe from that inner parent that's inside our head. And I was able to throw some things off. And that's an important deal. Well, that was huge. 7 questions to ask yourself that can help bring life back into balance. 7 questions. 7 questions, and then we'll be done. And then what will you do? Chances are, our tendency, the tendency that you have or I have is either to burn too brightly, or on the other hand, just not be as involved. What's your tendency? Number 1 is the pace of your life out of control. How's the pace? Is anything out of control is heading for a wreck. Isn't that right? How's the pace of your life? I think one of the first statements that it was Freeman Basinger. He was someone I worked with during the summer. I worked at a school. We helped clean the school. It was an elementary school. So we had a putty knife. And what do you do with the putty knife? You know what you do, one thing you do with the putty knife is you scrape things off. We always had to turn all the desks underside and scrape all the gum off, right? You needed to do that. And we had that whole school, just Freeman and I, and we had the whole summer. And one of the statements I remember him making, he says, you do the best you can and you go on. It was more of a pace. He'd been doing this for 15 years. And you just pace yourself. And when you're done, you're done. Have you thought about being a pastor before? When's your job done? All the sheep perfectly taken care of, and go home and rest. I don't know, some sheep are still wandering, some sheep are still, they're still making noises. Some don't seem to be as well fed as others. Some are wandering sheep. So when you're done, you tend to feel every minute, then strain to get it all done. That's not going to help. You are going to stress yourself out. You hate to be kept waiting. That's going to talk about your energy level. Because when your energy level wanes, who wants to wait? You probably need more margin in your life. Do you drive, talk, and eat faster than other people around you? There's a thought. Some people actually enjoy their meals instead of wolf it down. I mean, if anything, this message is for me at times. I mean, anyway. You multitask so much that you miss details. Oh my goodness. They can just put my name there. Do your spouse or children have to say your name repeatedly before you hear them? That also may mean you need hearing aids. That's a whole other subject. You forget what you ate the day before. Some people don't even know what they ate the last hour. Do you have to ask people to repeat themselves because your mind wanders? Do you become impatient with clerks and service people? Do you find it hard to unwind and relax? Clench your jaw or get migraine headaches. 75 to 90% of all doctor visits they have found are for stress-related ailments. Complaint. The most stressed employees develop heart problems at a 79% higher rate than their less stressed peers. Stress is the most common cause of long-term sickness for employees. 43% of American people between the ages of 13 and 64 say they rarely or never get a good night's sleep on weeknights. About two-thirds, 63% of Americans say their sleep needs are not being met during the week. We stress ourselves out. Sort of like what Roberta said the other year. She wanted to do it all because she don't want to miss anything. You can't do it all. Paul Yonggi Cho, pastor of one of the largest single churches in the world in Seoul, Korea. How many hundreds of thousands of people are in this church? Hundreds of thousands. On a Sunday morning, they have 12 services. And they got about 100,000 people coming to each service. Right? Okay. You get the idea. He was pastor before it really had explosive growth. You know what happened to him? He was literally sick. 10 years. Because he had burned his body out. And it was while he was flat on his back, trying to get other leaders to lead the church, where God, this is what he says, God gave him the idea that he needed to release the women to do small groups. And the explosive growth of this church happened when he released the women to lead small groups. And the cell church movement was first began way back there. Very interesting. If you know anything about Seoul, Korea, women don't lead. But God shut him down so that the church could actually grow. God allowed Satan to be shut down. And he burned himself out. Is the pace of your life out of control? Number 2, am I running on empty? Because it's hard to think full. Oh, that's so true. How about, are you running on empty? Let's look at emotions. Have you cried lately? Or really laughed? A healthy heart is fully aware of deep emotion and can name it. Anybody see The Bucket List? Mm-hmm. Interesting book. Yeah. You might not like some of the content and all this, and there's swearing in there and different stuff. But I like what happened because it's about relationships and how this man who was so self-oriented. You remember one of the things on the bucket list is that I laughed so hard I cried. It was on the bucket list. And you remember what they laughed about?
His gourmet coffee.
The gourmet coffee. They went through the monkeys.
Cats.
Oh, these cats. It went through these cats, and then it gave it its distinct flavor because after the cats defecated these coffee beans, anyway, and finally they had this laugh that was they just laughed and they cried. They crossed it off the list. These are 2 people that didn't have margin in their life at all on the bucket list, where they decided to get some margin and to live because they didn't have long to live. And the guy who was the hardest ended up being in remission and lived to like 84. And the guy who had a family, and but he says that was the man to change his life. But it's a good flip. Moments. Are you present or preoccupied? Ask your spouse, children, or friends if you're all there when you're with them. They can say whether you're skimming the key relationships. Are you there? Are you present? Are you focused? Fun. Do you set aside time for enjoyment, whether active sports, quiet activities? People. Do you resent phone calls and people seeking you out? What do you think? What do you think, Glenda? When I call?
Depends what day it is.
Shut her down. We're hunkering down and we ain't seeing
It's
nobody.
Ron. Do I want to answer it or not?
You see those opportunities for ministry? I'm an opportunity. How do you like this? I called Glenda one day and I said, Glenda, I got a problem. And she said, which one? I said, thanks a lot. I needed that, Glenda. I really needed that. And she finally got to it. How can I help you? Oh! Oh, my goodness.
And then I called him later in the week. Ron, I have a problem.
And how did I answer?
Which one?
Which one? I said, I was a good pupil. You taught me well. you see them as opportunities, are you running for cover trying to dodge people? If so, you're overextending. What do you think? Whispers. How long has it been since you heard the still small voice of God? One of the first signs of a hardening heart and a deafening ear is the quiet prompting. Right? Three. Am I dropping the right balls? Because some balls don't bounce back. I guess it's an interesting concept. Imagine life as a game in which you're juggling 5 balls in the air. You name them, like work, family, health, friends, and spirit. You ever feel like this, you're just juggling these balls, and if you concentrate on one of the balls, and then the other ball drops, and this and that and the other thing, and you're keeping all these in the air, and you soon will understand that work is a rubber ball. If you drop it, it will bounce back, but the other 4 balls, like family, health, friends, and spirit, are made of glass. And if you drop one of these, they will be irrevocably scuffed, marked, nicked, damaged, or even shattered. They, I don't know, may never be the same. You know, your body is pretty resilient, actually. You can neglect it for quite a long time, but there comes a point where it's beyond the point of return. The same thing with relationships, but you know what? Are you dropping the right balls? There are some things we need to drop out of our lives. There's some things we must not drop. 4, have I stopped believing I'm invincible? Normally, if you were, when we grow up and somewhere along the way, unless something dramatic happens early on, when we're 18 years old, we think we're invincible. We can almost do anything. And some of us live into adulthood thinking we're still invincible. We have physical limits. None of us can live well and be healthy without proper sleep and diet, etc., etc. We have emotional limits. None of us can cope with the weight of the whole world. We try to take on too much emotionally. Different people that I talk to, I say, you need to, emotionally, you have this burden on you. You need to care about people. You can't care, you can't support, you can't be God to them. You have mental limits. None of us can possess all the information around us. We have space limits. None of us can be in more than one space at one time, yet some of us try to do that. We have time limits. None of us can cram more than 24 hours a day, no matter how much time management books we read. This is the importance of boundaries. Number 5. When I relax, do I feel guilty? Some of us are there. When we relax, we feel guilty. Because rest is not a 4-letter word. Divert daily, withdraw weekly, abandon annually. Anita and I hadn't had a vacation for a while, you know. So when we were, I was at a drug-free safety trainer, and they had a Christmas party. They said there's going to be giveaways. They're giving away all sorts of stuff. They had TVs up there, they had this, they had that, they had all sorts of things up there. They didn't have an iPad, but they had some sort of notebooks up there and stuff like that. Said, go look up there. They had enough gifts for everybody. Everybody was there, they were going to give something away. But not all of them were. So I went up there and they had these little envelopes. On the envelope, one of the envelopes was a week condo stay wherever you want in the world. I said, that's kind of a nice one. So here we are. They pull the first, because everybody has a little tag, right? They pull the first one out. I get it.
Yeah. Awesome.
I went up there and got that week condo stay. Now I gotta figure out someone's gotta run my machines when I'm gone. I mean, someone's gotta fill things up, someone's gotta do other things. I don't know who's doing it, but we're going. We'll figure it out. Someone will do it, I don't know, I'll just say y'all have to do it or something. I mean, I don't know. Someone's gotta help me out, but we need to abandon annual. I remember when I gave people vacation, I was an employer, I don't know, I had 85, 90 people under me at this one company. When they went on vacation, I said, forget about this place. Don't even think about this place. Get out of here. Now it says withdraw weekly. Absolutely. We'll talk about that one. That's the next one. We got to withdraw. We need a day off. Everybody needs a day where you're physically. I was at this training 10 years ago, and who was there was a medical doctor. He said, your body needs to not have that stress for one day where you have to keep performing, or else what happens is, this is what it does physically to your body, and he went into all this medical stuff. You got to have this stuff. Divert daily. In the days, there's the morning block of time, the afternoon block of time, the evening block of time. At least have one of those blocks of time that you're not working. I don't know, we'll have to figure it out, hon. Even if you're burdened real heavy, if you're disappointed, you won't have hope. Who wants to put a lot of effort out there? You ain't getting anywhere. As long as you see progress, you think you have some energy. I agree with this. That's out of that book, the Hope Quotient. A lot of stuff that I'm doing is out of this. This is a good book. 6, do I understand that God makes a big deal out of margin? Because this really is the fourth commandment. What's the fourth commandment? Go ahead. What about it?
Keep it holy.
Keep Sabbath. And what is this? One day out of the week. You need a Sabbath rest. You need a Sabbath. Resting physically. During the French Revolution, the nation outlawed the Sabbath because they wanted people to work. A few years later, they had to reinstate it because the health of the nation had collapsed. Refocusing spiritually. Watching a ball game won't give you a new perspective on life, but getting in touch with God will. Recharging emotionally. Solitude and being with people you love can recharge. You need to restore. A time to restore. 7, am I putting first things first? Maybe your top 3 priorities. What are these? Why are these most important? Are you succeeding at putting first things first? There should be a why there. Why or why not? What will you do about this? Putting first things first. If you're burning it too much, you're not putting first things first. If you're very busy and stressed, chances are you're not putting first things first. Recalibrate. What are your top 3 priorities that you really want as your priorities? Don't review your life and say, these are my top priorities because this is where I give my time and my efforts and my money. Are those the priorities that you really want? And if so, are you succeeding at putting first things first? Why are you succeeding or why not, and what will you do about this? I want us to take some time right now. I want us to give just a couple minutes thought about what are your top priorities. Top 3 priorities. I don't want you to get too complicated. And then what would it recalibrate and live as those as the top priorities of your life. This is probably not very difficult, is it? This is in the book, The Hope Quotient. As a pastor of a church, he says we prepare several massive Christmas Eve services. He says it's the biggest thing we do all year, bigger than the Easter season. In fact, every year more than 40,000 people show up for 14 Christmas Eve services. He says it's big. It's a big deal in the community. It's a lot of fun. He says our worship pastor, Lincoln Brewster, is an unbelievably gifted musician. Lots of people come to hear him. Lots of visitors come for the first time because someone said, you gotta come to this. He's very good and an integral part of Bayside Church. 2 years ago, Lincoln Brewster came just before the Christmas season got started. He came to the pastor of the church and he says, trying to figure something out. My son is in a school play that takes place during the first Christmas Eve performance. He said, I'll be at our service, I'll do all my stuff, and then I'll race over there to see part of this play. Then I'll come back. And the pastor says, no, you're not. Lincoln was, what? And then the pastor says, we'll have someone else lead the whole service. Matter of fact, if you're at that service, if you're at the Christmas Eve service, during your son's play, I'm going to fire you. Go watch the play, we'll handle it. Tears came down Brewster's eyes. He says, are you serious? Yes, we'll handle it. We'll have more services, and you'll be there for all of them. But don't show up at that first one. Reminds me of the father who habitually brought work home with him. His little kindergarten daughter, and says, Daddy, why do you always bring work home? He said, because I don't get it finished at work. Daddy, the girl said with a little sweet smile, maybe they should put you in the slower group. Oh my goodness. Lord, some of us need to hear this message today. All of us have times when we're overstretched and beyond our means. And how did we get that way, and how do we get a semblance of normalcy, a proper balance? Lord, help us to honestly face ourselves, to know that the life that we have to live is a marathon and not a sprint. Help us to pace ourselves so that we can serve you all our life with a joyful heart. Thank you, Father. Encourage us to make positive decisions and help us to say no where we need to say no, and to say yes where we need to say yes. That's as simple as it gets when making new boundaries.
Thank you, Father. In Jesus' name.
Uh, my job this week was I had to work 6 days. Well, I didn't have to work. I volunteered to work 6 days, and then I stayed up real late last night. This stretching yourself thin is hitting home pretty good. But I mean, I enjoy working and whatnot, but it's always nice to have that last day. Last year at work, I volunteered to work a couple Sundays all in a row, so I ended up working them almost a month straight. That was
7 days a week.
yeah, 7 days a week, 10 hours a day for a month. That was a long time. And yeah, you definitely start to realize how nice it is to have an off day instead of just going and going and going and going. Definitely had to try and find a way to relax when I came home instead of just having that one day. Had to relax daily instead of wait until the weekend. So,